I can't wait any longer.
Let's go.
I can't believe you committed suicide. I cannot believe you committed suicide. How could you have done this? How could you have committed suicide?
Damn, we need to make this thing even.
I can't believe it's you. Don't tell anyone. I'm not ready for this. Don't tell anyone. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome all you Bringweavers. Last episode, we brought you a double set of interviews on Double Down, and this month we'll be staying in 2005 as we take a deep dive into Neil Breen's debut feature. But that's not where this double gimmick ends, as this month, to celebrate the festive period, you'll be getting a double helping of this, the only Neil Breen podcast. More on that at the end of the show. Now, this numbering is going to get very confusing, but this 6th episode of My Scene with Breen will actually be our 2nd episode of Keen on Breen, where myself and a special guest deliberate all things Breen through the focus of one of his works. And today's guest is actually the person who inspired the temporary podcast title. When I first contacted him with an invite to come on and chat, he replied, "I am very keen to talk Breen." That does not entitle him, though, to any share of this series whatsoever. I thought I should just make that clear. Stuart Ashen, commonly known as Ashens, is a British comedian, writer and actor, best known for his comedic reviews of obscure and low-quality products. Ashen rose to fame through his YouTube channel Ashens, which often features reviews of knockoff gadgets, retro toys, video games and bizarre food items, delivered with a dry humour and a distinctive deadpan style. He has also co-written and produced 2 comedy feature films and is currently in pre-production on his 3rd, a folk horror told in reverse titled Turn Back. But before we go to Stuart, allow me to quickly fact you up on Double Down. Double Down was released in 2005 and starred Neil himself as Aaron Brand, Laura Hale as Megan, his deceased fiancée, George Kerr as an old man who Aaron chances upon in the desert, and Robert D. Francesco and Mike Brady as a pair of agents, presumably working for the CIA. The official poster tagline cum synopsis reads, "The controversial story of a lone genius who closes down the Las Vegas Strip. The government can't stop him as he reunites with his dead girlfriend each night." And that is a full stop in between those last 2 clauses there. It's not a comma. The film has a 4.0 out of 10 rating on IMDb, a 2.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd, and 55% on the popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes. Ewan Gledow of cultfollowing.co.uk said his effective storytelling styles and engrossing abilities in front of the camera are a force to be reckoned with. He presents a cluster of genuine surrealism, and that he was a unique creative. Daniel Williams of Fusion magazine said, "The best way to explain Double Down is not to call it a film, but an experience. It transcends normal film quality and becomes its own beast." And Jonathan Sisson of We Are Cult said, "Summing up the plot of Double Down cannot possibly translate how utterly surreal and incoherent the whole thing is. Actually, given his independence and preference for cryptic narratives, he's more accurately described as a sort of anti-David Lynch." First question then is the obvious one. Your Breen origin story. How did you come across the work of Neil Breen?
So I have a friend who is very into bad films and things, as we both are. And he's totally dragged me down this rabbit hole over the last 15 years. And he watches, what's the YouTube channel? Red Letter Media, specializes in bad films. And one day he said, "My God, they've just done this thing. I think we need to see the first of these and see how it goes." So we ended up keeping it for the movie night that we have with friends sometimes. So about, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of us sat down and watched Double Down. And nobody understood it. Everybody loved it. So we then moved along and watched his entire filmography over a period of about 2 years. By the end of it, it was only me and my friend who suggested it pretty much who was actually keen to watch any more. Everybody else had sort of dropped out. They're too similar. They're getting worse. They're making no sense. And why is he always Space Jesus? We're like, no, you can't ask questions like that. That's the core of the whole thing, you know. So by the time the last one came around, there were only like 3 of us who actually went on and watched it. But we remained pure to the vision of Breen and watched them all.
So what is it that attracts you to his work then?
I think because there's nothing else like it. And also, it's got that pure vision of he has written this script exactly as he wants it. And he is showing it to you exactly as he wants it. He doesn't care if the effects are not realistic. To him, it's about getting this story and the idea across. And the problem is he's not very good at that, really. So you do end up with a very muddled thing, even though he'll knock you over the head 1,000 times with his message. So you get the sort of the general message of, but the actual storytelling is quite incoherent at times, as you've probably noticed. And it's that thing of he just doesn't care as long as the story is put through. It's absolutely pure outsider art, I think, in that sense, because it's the thing. When you go and see a school play and your kids are in it, and one of the trees is a kid dressed up as a tree, you don't go, that's a bloody kid, that is. That's not a tree. And he's sort of going in with the same idea as that. It's like, none of this is real. Doesn't matter if I make it look real or not. As long as what I have in my head comes out in some form, jobs are good. Whereas, of course, films don't quite work like that. You do need a little bit of sort of visual... what's a nice way of putting it? You need it to look like what it is a bit more in a film. And also there's ways of telling stories visually that he doesn't really get into. But that's a different story. But ultimately, it's one man's idea that he's managed, I think, to put out quite purely. And that does not happen very often. It's always fascinating when it does.
So do you think, because there's an interesting thing there, do you think then that some of these moments, some of these effects, where things might come across as maybe slapdash or cheaper, you think that it's just him getting his ideas onto the paper?
I think we've actually got proof that he doesn't care about it now, because I remember reading something about there's an amazing scene where he fights a white tiger in Cade the Tortured Crossing, and the person who did the effects for the tiger sent him sort of the basic stuff and went, right, here's what it's going to look like roughly. He said, but obviously, I'm going to do a couple more passes and I can make it look a bit better than that. And Breen was just like, no, it's fine. And the person's like, no, it doesn't cost anymore. I haven't finished the job yet. Like, I will make it look a bit better. It's like, no, don't worry about it. That's plenty good enough. And it's just like, I don't care. It's not, nobody's going to think it's real anyway. I just need that idea on a digital file that I can put on a DVD, show on the screen. I don't care if it's actually visually convincing or not at all.
Do you, because you are yourself an independent filmmaker, does that mean you can relate to him in a certain ways, or a kind of kingship there?
I think maybe subconsciously there is always that, because you kind of look at it and think, yeah, that wasn't great. I kind of see why you did that, because you didn't want to pay for XYZ. There's always something. But the thing is, there's different ways of approaching this. So when we're making something, we work out very early on what we can afford, what we can't afford, what you can get away with, what you can't get away with. And then you work within your constraints to make it as good as possible and look as good as possible. Whereas Breen is totally the opposite of that. He's just like, this is the story, and it doesn't matter how much money we have, we're going to make this story on the screen, even if it looks like a load of bum. I don't care. The story just has to be out there.
You were obviously writing to your budget, which is the opposite of what Neil Breen does.
Exactly. Yeah, the budget to him is, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, because it does certainly bleed through in places, but I think it's creatively irrelevant, perhaps, as a way of putting it. It doesn't matter if it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to fight a white tiger in this scene. If we were doing that, we were like, well, no, we're not, because it's going to look dreadful. It's going to totally turn people off. How are we going to get to, you can't CGI it. Oh God, no, it's not going to happen. Whereas with Mr. Breen, it's just, no, I'm fighting a white tiger. Here is footage of me punching the air. Please make a tiger appear on that. Goodbye.
But is that not to be celebrated in a way that he will not allow the budget to dictate what he wants to do?
See, this is why it's worth watching. at the end of the day, because you're going to, as we said, they've got the purity of his vision and his story that he's going to come out no matter what, even if it does involve a weird CG tiger because he didn't collaborate and he didn't let them finish the effects, you know. if it wasn't that way, I mean, could you imagine Breen working within the parameters of a budget? You just can't, because then the story would be so pared back and so non-fantastical, and that's the whole thing. His stories are so crazily big, but what he shoots is so small is another aspect of why it's fascinating. So much of Double Down happens in the desert or on a bit of the strip, or it's stock footage, and that's pretty much it.
I'm jumping ahead slightly, but seeing as you bring up the stock footage, of course, this is something that, you know, we get in quite a few Breen films. Would you like to guess? The film is 1 hour and 33 minutes and 33 seconds. Would you like to guess how much of that is stock footage?
Oh, let me try and work this out. So, one of my main memories of watching this film for the first time is that the first 2 minutes are basically nearly all just stock footage of clouds. So you're getting about 90 seconds of stock footage in the first 90 seconds. So bearing that in mind...
You're going to say 100%?
Yeah, no. Let me think. It's probably not that high, because a lot of them are, from what I recall, are very weird cuts. Just like, oh, he's talking about something and the world's on fire, and here's a picture of a fireman, and then there's somebody else doing something, and it doesn't quite cohesively come together at all. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to come with a figure, 20%.
Well, that's not bad. So I did this myself. I went through this. And I will be fair and say there's odd shots, like where the planes are coming down at the airport, or there's odd shots of Las Vegas where it's like this could be stock footage, it could be footage they shot themselves. So there's a bit of wiggle room, a little bit of wiggle room. But there are 13 minutes and 38 seconds of stock footage, and that's roughly 15% of the film is stock footage.
15, okay. That's still impressively high.
How do you rate Double Down then compared to the rest of his body of work?
I think this is by far my favourite still. I remember enjoying it, but I'd kind of assumed, because it's, you know, been several years since I first watched it, that it was mostly because it was the first one I'd seen. And the new one, you know, when it's all new and exciting and fresh, then it's going to be better, isn't it? But actually going back and watching it again... yeah, I think it is my favourite by a considerable margin. You've got a little bit of... it's hard to describe any of Breen's characters as flawed, but this is his most flawed character in that he's not completely perfect all the time. In fact, he's a bit of a bungler when it comes to actually doing some stuff. So that adds an extra dimension to it. But it's got plenty of bizarre moments. There's always something weird happening or about to happen. You know, you're never going that far between. Whereas when it goes into his later films, particularly the more supernaturally ones, because he tends to veer between like weird semi-paranormal spy thriller to completely supernatural space Jesus stuff. A lot of the space Jesus stuff is very empty, and you're back in the desert, but nothing's happening. And, you know, whereas with this, there's always something about to occur, and it never makes any sense. And I think that's what we're here for, isn't it?
This was probably my least favourite.
Oh.
Now, watching it yesterday again, I did enjoy it a lot more. And I agree, and we'll come up with this. I agree. I think his character is probably one of the most interesting I think we get. It's certainly, I think, probably the most grounded. It certainly is, I think, it's the best shot of all his films.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, especially considering... well, where he went with Cade the Tortured Crossing, where it's just kind of looks like a 90s FMV game or something. Yeah.
Do you enjoy this era of Breen then more compared to when we get into the more heavy green screen stuff?
Oh, very much. From what I can recall, we were watching them over the years. This was the high point for me, and it just slowly goes down each time. However, when we got to Cade the Tortured Crossing, that's so weird and so different, and it almost feels like Breen himself has checked out to an extent. That kind of piqued my interest again, because now it's like, what on earth? You know, why is this guy playing a keyboard in a green screened cell? I don't understand any of this. Why is there suddenly a dance sequence, you know? And that brought us back in, I think, or those of us still watching them. It's all a bit different, you know. But the others all feel so similar. I think is the problem. Especially because visually, as you said, Double Down is a bit sort of above the rest. And then I could not tell you the difference between most of his other films. I would have to, watch again and make notes in order to separate them in my mind. Whereas Double Down was a little bit more specific in my memory. I think it stands on its own better than the others.
There's less what the fuck moments in this, it feels. But yeah, that's why it always surprises me when people do say they enjoy Double Down, because there just seems less, as you say, choreographed dances.
I think for me it's because it almost feels like he's trying to tell a normal story, but then you're getting your poisoned strawberries and he's throwing anthrax everywhere and none of it really makes sense. Whereas his other ones, just nothing makes any sense. So when you have to sit there for long periods of time before suddenly I can't remember which one it is, they go underground and find the guy who's manipulating a spine, which makes shadows go and kill people.
That's pass through, isn't it, that one?
That's interesting, but we've had to sit there a long time before that happened.
In your own words, what is Double Down about?
Oh, God, that's the question, isn't it? So the problem with it is, or with Breen in general, I obviously hadn't seen it for years, so I watched it again about less than 3 weeks ago, about 2 weeks and a couple of days ago. So let's say 16 days. And I made copious notes. And now I still can't remember what it's about going back to it. And my notes, honestly, I'm glad I wrote them digitally, because if I'd written these on paper and dropped them on the floor, somebody would call the police if they found them, because they'd just think it was the ramblings of a lunatic. I've got things on here like poisoned strawberry, question mark, skeleton in a body bag, wants to shut down Vegas for 2 months. Invisible shield. How is he safe? The whole thing sounds like some mad conspiracy theory. And I've seen it so recently and I made copious notes, and I still feel like you could never prepare yourself to actually kind of fully bloody relate the story to somebody else. But basically, he's some sort of super competent guy who's good at omnicompetent. Is that a word? Omnicompetent mega hacker who worked for the American government. But the American government's like, oh no, he can control all our systems because he is super guy. So they shot his girlfriend, and she died, and that really pissed him off, strangely enough. Should have just shot him, that'd been quicker. And then he's like, oh no, but now I'm having, flashbacks to that and problems, and oh God, I'm talking to the dead girlfriend, and I'm really in a bad place. And now, even though I'm a patriot, I'm working for foreign governments and getting loads of money for working for them, which I mostly give to children's charities. An old man dies and gives him a magic rock. Mustn't forget the magic rock that he thinks means he can cure cancer, but he can't. He thinks he's cured a child's cancer. The child dies anyway. Yeah, good work. There's some stuff about anthrax. He gets missions from somebody, and you're not really sure if they're a bad guy or the American government, or is the American government the bad guy? You're not entirely sure about this. He tries to experiment on some newlyweds and kidnaps the wrong couple and ends up just killing them and leaving them in a desert or something. Then, God, there's a. Yeah, you see, I'm trying. Even with notes, I'm trying to put it together. What's going on? And he's also a massive terrorist now, planting biological bombs in major cities all over the world. Good God! When you say it back, it just gets weirder and weirder, doesn't it? But in the end, he basically turns his back on it all, because he's also, of course, some sort of cyborg. Mustn't forget that. I think I made a note of how it was described. Hang on, where is it?
Bioelectrical implants.
That's it. Bioelectromedical implants. Yeah. Then he sort of gets more mental clarity, turns his back on all his hacking stuff, and then ends up at peace, sort of, with his dead girlfriend or something. And then he's going to, I don't know, walk the earth like Kane from Kung Fu. I'm not entirely sure at the end, but
yeah. So we discover that he's plays Aaron Brand. He's a covert agent mercenary. As you said, he used to work for the United States to fight terrorism. He was their best agent as well. I think you maybe forgot to mention that he was their best agent.
Oh, he was the best. He was like a magician almost. Yeah, yes, he's amazing. Yeah.
His fiancée is assassinated, so he opens himself up to work for any nation that wants to use him. We do see a lot of this later anyway. We are getting out with really Breen telling us and not showing us.
Maybe this is what put you off a bit, but there is a lot of exposition through narration in this one, a lot. The other problem is, of course, when the exposition is coming naturally through the film, it's kind of incoherent to the point of incomprehensibility at times. So it's like, thank God maybe he is doing some of it through the narration, because then you know what's going on. If not, it'd be just a complete eye roller, you know.
His girlfriend Megan has been the love of his life since he was 7. Which is a bit similar to Fateful Findings, where he's got that.
I was going to say, yeah, not the first time it is the first time he does that, but not the only time he does that, yeah.
Well, how many other features would we say maybe in Double Down do we see throughout the rest of his work?
Oh, I mean, the most obvious one is that he's a super powerful figure, which happens in literally all of them. I mean, really, that is the absolute core of all the stories, isn't it? Whether he's Space Jesus or a hacker or whatever. The difference in this one is there's very little sort of paranormally, supernaturally stuff. It's just that because he meets an old man, has a chat with the old man, says the old man isn't a foreign agent. He then climbs a cliff. The old man tries to follow him and falls off and dies. He like cradles him in his arm as he dies. The old man gives him a small stone, and then he thinks he's got these supernatural powers which allow him to cure cancer, but he can't. Is the rock supernatural, or is it all in his head?
Yeah, that's interesting, because as you said, yeah, we discovered, don't we, obviously it hasn't worked. He feels he's cured this girl who's also called Megan. I guess maybe that's why he has some affinity to her. He does collect the rock at the end as if it's precious. I'm wondering if it does link. I mean, I'll come to this later. I'm wondering if it does link to a certain theme that we'll come to later when we get to that part of the film. Also, you know, you mentioned the bioelectrical implants, but we don't really see what that does or what effect that has on him.
It's just mentioned, and then what does it do? Don't know. Does it do anything in the plot? Nope. Yeah.
What things, I mean, you've covered some of these. What things can he do? What does he do? What things can he do? We've mentioned the bioelectrical implants. We've mentioned he gives his millions away to charity. What else? What else?
Control pretty much any computer system. That's kind of the core of it. From his simple, how do you describe it? Simple but brilliant setup?
Yes, his satellite dishes, his 5 laptops and his 6 cell phones.
So that's it. He's got a load of cheap cell phones, some broken laptops, and a satellite dish on the back of his car, which he uses to literally control the world. If I recall, he uses the same laptop props repeatedly in other films as well, and none of them seem to actually work.
He can create a force field. You've mentioned that, the force field that obviously kills anybody if they get near him.
That is something that he mentions and it happens, and then it's never mentioned again, if I remember. But literally somebody sneaks up to his car and just dies. And you're like, how does it know not to kill him when he goes to his car?
Well, he's programmed it that way, I imagine. I presume this is a way of answering the question. The question might come up, well, how come somebody can't just sneak up on you and kill you? So I guess it was written in to answer that question.
I mean, they could have just, I don't know, bombed him or something, actually.
Stop coming up with these salient points. Stop it.
Oh, he's a fighter pilot, isn't he? He says he's a massively decorated fighter pilot, which never comes into the plot at all.
He's got lots of medals. He can contact any leader.
Oh, yes, any world leader. Yeah, just give him a bell and there he is on the phone to them, literally.
He can start and end wars.
He can plant bombs everywhere or get other people to plant bombs for him.
Yes, he's got biological bombs planted in 7 major cities in case anybody tries to move against him. Oh, well, that's what he said. We're answering the questions. This is again about over-criticising, isn't it? The reason you wouldn't bomb him and kill him is because unless he signs in every 3 days,
of course,
those bombs will go off.
Those bombs go off, which seems a bit... When you're giving millions to children's charities, you probably don't also want to be planting massive biological weapons in major cities. But
he can steal any car.
Oh, I'd forgotten that one. Yeah.
He can create an EMP blast 200 miles above the Earth to knock out all electrical power over an area for 1 month.
That was true. 1 month seems crazy long.
And of course, his eating habits as well.
Famously, yes. He just seems to eat tuna. Tins of tuna.
Why do you think that is? Does that symbolise anything? Why do we think that is?
That is an odd one, isn't it? Maybe he read somewhere that tuna's good for... I mean, actors who are losing weight will eat a lot of tuna and not much else. So maybe he just thought, well, it's the most basic food stuff. And because he's kind of got no life... Well, he describes himself as leading a double life in the film, but I feel like he doesn't have a double life. He's just in his car doing weird shit. There is no other part to it. I think it's there to just show that even though he's got all this power, his life's rubbish and he just doesn't care about himself.
Yes. I wonder if part of it is to show this humble... He's this humble character. And whether this links in, I will get into the more biblical aspects maybe later on, but whether this is this, he's a humble character. He just eats, because he's obviously got millions, but he donates it all to charity and he lives off tuna. He's humble.
Oh, yeah. He's humble until he talks about himself, and then he's the greatest human who ever lived, and he's absolutely omnipotent, and he knows and can do everything. I just thought, right, isn't there a thing where if you eat too much tuna, you can get mercury poisoning?
I don't know. I know if
is that a thing I've made up? Hang on. Yeah, it can. Tuna contains methyl mercury, which can be absorbed by the gastrointestinal tract and distributed to the brain and nervous system. But it's very small amounts. You would need to eat, like it says here, 25 tins a week, which he's probably doing in this.
Breakfast, lunch, and tea. So he's probably knocking off 21 a week at least.
Yeah,
snacks.
And he's having a couple for each meal. We don't know if it's just one. That's interesting. There we are. New Breen theory dropped.
And this is now going to tie to something else. 'Cause we discover, his main mission is, he's being told by a country to shut down Las Vegas for 2 months. We don't know who, we don't know why. On the side, he's killing these white-collar criminals, which is kind of our first little hint of what will be probably most of his movies. But he buries them in the desert, where he kind of lives with them. Is this to do with guilt? And so is he trying to kill himself? I thought maybe he's eating all this tuna to kill himself. Maybe we see he's a struggling, complicated character. He's writing "Help Me" in blood in his car.
So,
is this about guilt, do we think? For what? For the way he's going, for the way his life is, this route he's going down?
There could be an aspect of this, isn't it? Because then at the end, he sort of turns his back at it all and basically clears his conscience by not doing the attack on Las Vegas. So, maybe the guilt of what he has done is weighing heavily on him. But is it the guilt of what he did for the American government or for the other governments, or just a combination of everything?
It seems that the film is about a man who is losing his humanity. And he's battling to overcome it. The visions of the child, I presume, again, it's the innocence, isn't it? Yeah. It's his past, it's his innocence that he's kind of losing.
Is that the actual theme of the film? Because it's certainly in there, I think, to an extent. As you say, that it's not subtle about it with the, look, here is my past child self. I've finally come to terms with my lost innocence and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, maybe it does run deeper in the film than you think. Maybe this is one of the reasons he's having such struggles and is literally writing "Help Me" in blood on his car and things like this. He does need help. But eventually he just kind of has to help himself, although his dead girlfriend maybe helps him a bit as well. But then is that real or isn't it?
It seems to be that the girl is in dream. He talks about how I'm with you when I fall asleep. Although, again, that isn't necessarily made clear, because every time he sees the girl, it doesn't seem that he's being asleep. It's some kind of hallucination. Yeah. I think she's a symbol, isn't she, of him trying to get his humanity back.
I think that, that makes sense, especially at the end as he's driving off.
And he can't move on. Yeah, he can't move on. And I guess this is, again, what is the conflict, is what holding him. I mean, he says, "I can't leave you," which I presume, again, he kind of means, I can't move on. As you said, he's scrawling this "Help Me" in blood on his car. He always seems to be climbing and scrambling up that hill, which again can be a source of fun, but again, whether that is symbolic of him trying to reach that goal.
It's got to be, hasn't it? Well, I mean, it could just be a weird visual that he likes, I suppose, but he does do a lot of scrambling up that bloody cliff. It's in the film far too much, really. So maybe that's the thing. This is like the symbolism of him trying to ascend all these sort of earthly problems he's having and all his guilt, and get to the top and then see with clarity the rest of his life and embrace his lost innocence. So, I mean, after you've been planting massive biological weapons in 7 major cities, I feel like going back to your innocence is going to be difficult. But
I've got a natural talent, and my talent basically has been honed by training, dedication, passion, and the will never to give up.
The man, the myth, the legend.
There's no one else like me, because there's only one Andrew Stone.
Thought lost for nearly 15 years, the complete saga of Starman and its frontman, Andrew Stone, is now available in its entirety on YouTube.
It's not about the X Factor, it's about the It Factor, and I've got it.
In a new and exclusive re-edited format, witness the reality star dubbed The Real David Brent.
Okay, I think I am one of the best men in bed, and everyone's gonna think I'm an arrogant tosser, but I'm brilliant in bed.
You won't believe your eyes or ears of this 4-part series recreated from footage from Sky Television's Pineapple Dance Studios.
Yes, I am brilliant in bed because I have no fear, no barriers, and I'm a giver.
Just search for the Andrew Stone tapes on YouTube now.
I mean it, turn it off. I'm getting off now. I'm really off.
So do you think then that we could very easily fall into this thing of over-criticising Neil Breen?
I think that there's always going to be an element of that, especially when something becomes sort of the cult bad movie or the cult bad director. Oh, yeah, you've got to go in and blah, blah, blah. I think there's always going to be an element of that. But you do have to remember that these stories are told so incoherently that it's almost impossible to actually work out what's going on. And you are watching it and you're going, so is this the bit that's supposed to be like, arty and symbolic, or is this just he's not done it right? Because there's for everything that we are saying is oh well, actually that does make sense because that's metaphor for this, that, and the other. There's an equal amount, maybe twice as much stuff where, well, this doesn't make sense, not because it's art, but just because it hasn't been put together properly. And I think that's the thing. You get to the end of it and you're not really sure what can be interpreted as art and what was just somebody not knowing what they're doing.
So he's testing out his vials of poison. He kills a bunch of fish in the lake. We get the flashback to his girlfriend being assassinated. And we do see Megan, played by Laura Hale, her biggest scene in a way where she speaks the most. Who do you think does the best performance in this film?
Most of the extras. This is not a film for strong performances, is a polite way of putting it. Breen sometimes matches the emotion in a scene to what he does. I don't recall, actually, Megan really being particularly good or bad. So that's possibly a good sign.
Well, I'm going to say she gets my vote. She gets my vote. Yeah. She's quite competent. She doesn't get much to do. She doesn't get much to do. But certainly that little scene with him by the pool, I think it comes across as quite genuine and quite believable.
The fact that I'm not remembering it has got to say that it did its job, really, isn't it?
And that's how you would award an Oscar.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't remember it being
to the
bad.
Other performances. Yes, I don't remember anything about it. But compared to the rest of every other performance this year, God. And then, of course, infamously, we see Breen's bum and part of his scrotum as well when he is floating face down in the pool. Yeah. That's an odd scene as well, isn't it? Because he sort of falls into the pool as if he's been shot, but he hasn't been shot. So is it that thing of he's been shot symbolically, he's been killed emotionally? Again,
is there some kind of symbolism with the crucifix type spread that they're both doing?
That's true, yes.
Is it something to do with him just being close to her as she's dead and he goes to lie with her?
I feel like you could be onto something with that. I mean, equally, maybe that was just the most comfortable position to float face down. But
I mean, imagine if he had have opened up his legs to float properly. Imagine what we would have seen then.
That's wow. That's that's getting a different classification. Yeah,
the body bag with presumably the dead girlfriend in it. Are we chalking that up as again a dream, a hallucination, or is he carrying around his partner's dead body?
Yeah, it's him carrying around the emotional weight of the dead girlfriend, I suppose. I cannot escape it. It is as if she is here with me as a skeleton in a sack.
So he meets with his agency friends. They tell him that a man is planning something big that's going to take out half of Las Vegas. And obviously this is presumably himself.
Yeah.
They've got this intel.
This was confusing. Yeah.
We're never sure, are we, how much they know and how much they don't know?
Yeah, and like sometimes he's in the desert giving anthrax to people, and you're never quite sure who's what and who's doing who. But my understanding of that is the same as yours. They literally go to going, oh my God, somebody's going to do this massive thing and take out Las Vegas for weeks. But it is him who's planning it, and they don't seem to realize it's him who's planning it. So maybe that is the double life which he references. So because the double life isn't him secretly being a spy. I mean, that's all he does. The double life is him working for the government, but also working against the government. He's a good guy, but he's also putting bombs in major cities.
The Anthrax deal, he does say something about, I need to do this to keep up my cover. So yes, he's a double agent and he's working obviously with, well, we're not told who it is, but we are told that agent who's killed is a CIA agent. So presumably he's working with the CIA, but he's also working with this other country. He does kidnap the terrorist character with who obviously is wearing the fake beard and hands those over to the CIA. Beard. He then does show up again in the shootout at the end, who I presume they are working for Neil Breen. I presume they're working for Aaron because they say, oh, is this still a go-ahead? Are we still going for that Watson saying?
They're working for him, but whether they're working for what he actually wants or are just part of his cover, I don't know.
And this idea of him, you know, shutting down the Las Vegas Strip, working for the countries, but he does support the USA troops and things. And this, and we are going to, obviously, these ideas of mass genocide and stuff coming far more in his later films. What do you make of his politics then? Because it seems like he's a liberal guy, but maybe that's not reflected in his method.
It's an odd one. Looking purely at Double Down, he's basically really saying that you can't entirely trust governments and they should be taking biological and chemical threats more seriously. And you're like, okay, yep, you're quite specific on that. But as he goes into his other films and becomes more Space Jesus-y, it's an odd one, isn't it? He's massively against corporations, corporate greed and corporate corruption. I mean, that becomes painfully obvious the more you go on. He is not subtle on this at all. You know, he literally has heads of companies crucified in one of the films, if I remember.
So we now get into this this kind of second act of the film, which feels different. You've mentioned it already, where he meets the old man, which I believe fans have kind of called Ben Kenobi. He bangs his head, he dies.
Yes.
And it goes feels biblical. It goes a bit biblical. We really get into the special powers, or he says, you know, I feel your spirit. I am your spirit. We've got this choral music behind it all. Did you pick up on any of that, or what did it mean to you?
Yeah, it's not like a completely hard turn, but it definitely leans far more into this sort of spiritual, borderline paranormal stuff with I can cure cancer now. Whereas my friend's daughter, I have cured her cancer. But then, of course, it's all bollocks because she dies. I don't really know where that leaves us. It's just some weird religious experience he's having, and he feels he has powers he doesn't, because he actually does have near godlike powers when it comes to like computers and controlling the world and phoning up the president for a laugh and all this kind of stuff. But then the spiritual stuff, he's just entirely imagining, isn't he? You know, just doesn't work. Maybe, I mean, I feel like we're doing heavy lifting for the film that's probably not in it, but is that a thing where it's like, oh yeah, he's very good in the sort of mundane running of the world and all this kind of stuff, but when it comes to the spiritual matters, he is, you know, entirely bereft. He has nothing, and that is why he needs to, you know, find himself and re-find his innocence and that kind of stuff. I don't think I'd picked up until this watch about the phone call where it actually turns out the girl has presumably died, or the cancer is still there, it's got worse, whatever's happened. Because yeah, it's a very unusual thing that he meets this person, he's given the nugget, he thinks he can cure, he feels he can, he feels he's now got the power to bring back his dead fiancée. But then that just turn out to be a dead end and doesn't go anywhere. Is it something to do with, maybe worshipping false idols, or, I mean, the whole thing in the desert, is this again a bit like Jesus's 40 days and 40 nights? Temptation, some of these things, you know, that is resisting temptation and such. Again, is that why he's eating? Is the tuna thing like he's starving himself, like Jesus? It doesn't feel, does it, like it actually fits. It's the only thing I can think of where it sort of becomes coherent to at least not the narrative of the film, but because it certainly isn't coherent to that, but the themes of the film, so to speak. Yeah, although he's like this superpowered guy, he's not superpowered with everything. He thinks he's God, but you know what? Actually, he isn't. He may have these astonishing powers, but he needs to rein himself in a bit.
Why do you think he gravitates to these sorts of characters?
That is the number one question, isn't it? He always plays it himself. They're always incredibly powered, sometimes actual like gods or demigods or something. I think he just likes playing them is probably the simplest answer. It's fun. I feel like if it was a vanity thing, which I mean, maybe there's elements of that at the start, but as we've gone on and people have started to take the piss and stuff, if it was just a vanity thing, it would lose its luster, surely, because it wouldn't be like, oh man, I'm going to play the super guy and I'm going to look amazing again, because people don't think it looks amazing. They think it's a bit weird. And that surely that would take the fun out of that for you. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't read any feedback and he's just like, yep, going to be God again. That'll be a laugh.
Then after this, we get again more into the kind of the secret agent stuff. They want him to kill a baddie's loved ones, because that will, demoralize him. And again, we see people filming him, but she gets shot. I'm not sure. I'm guessing that's maybe shot by someone. I'm presuming because I think the CIA are trying to track him, aren't they? They're the ones who planted the bugs on him.
Yeah.
So presumably somebody who works for Aaron shoots the girl in the car. He borrows the car. He, as you said, poisons the strawberry, and he picks up the newlyweds.
What? I love that because it's so inexplicable. How do we get these people? I'm gonna poison some strawberries. Yeah.
Well, and picks up the wrong ones. He picks up the wrong ones. He bungles it, which is an interesting choice.
Again, I feel we're doing the heavy lifting here, but like maybe it's showing that he's becoming less competent in his day-to-day life and needs to detach from it. I don't know. I feel like he just thought, oh, that's a good twist. That's a laugh.
Again, I'm gonna, I'm not going to use the phrase heavy lifting because I like this. And I think that could be quite correct. Again, he's losing his humanity. He's losing his skills, maybe, so he's making silly mistakes.
Maybe it's that thing of he's falling apart. He's got all these powers, but look, he can't concentrate anymore. He can't even get the basics right.
He releases the anthrax. He rubs it against the guy's arm. I'm not sure how that links to the rest.
I haven't got a bloody clue. It's on my list here of what really is the anthrax thing.
But I guess maybe it's just another job.
Yeah, maybe it's just a foreign government going, yeah, we want this done.
To be fair, we do get that lovely line in the limo where the girl goes, oh, we've only known each other for 2 days and we're married. And he says, that's all it takes in Vegas. Why did you wait so long? Which is a good line. So he starts these attack diversions around the world to distract from what's going to happen in Las Vegas, which again, I'm not sure if the diversions are necessary when he could just use his EMP to knock out. We do get that iconic scene of him in the sleeveless denim shirt with the badges on.
Every medal he could find on eBay. Stuck on that denim vest, yeah.
But that's it. It is just that one. That's become such an iconic shot of Neil Breen. But he gets changed into it, but he then does not wear it for the rest of the film.
No, it's there purely as that image of like him showing his past achievements and being a bit grandiose. Again, his characters are quite good at that. And then, that's done. Don't need those anymore. It's gone.
And we leading to maybe his big acting scene where he's at the height of his kind of conflict within himself. I can't go on with this. I'm American. I love my country. And it's quite an iconic bit of acting from him there.
Oh my God, bless him. The big mental breakdown, which, I mean, it's difficult to portray that kind of thing in a manner that the audience will accept anyway. Even with professionals and big crews and all the money, it's hard to get something like that to read well. And when it's Neil Breen writhing around going, yeah, I love my country and all this kind of, it's just, whoa.
Well, back in 2005, this obviously wasn't a thing, but it's something that's, become a thing now since the cult of Breen started. And it's the big, big question. Is he self-aware?
No, no way this is self-aware. That is Breen's superpower, because in the early films, is clearly not self-aware at all. It's just a fact of, this is what I want, I've got it down, bang, done, move on. It really is as simple as that, I think. There's no, shall we put some funny bits in or anything like that? And, maybe if I really do this over. No. That is what he wants. That is his art that he wants to see, realized into the physical world in some way, shape or form. The real interesting thing about Breen is, despite all this stuff going on over the years, and as you say, this cult of Breen coming up on that, I don't think he's any more self-aware. Really don't. Even watching Cade the Tortured Crossing, it feels lazy And it feels like he just doesn't want to be on set and do this stuff anymore, and is just pieced together in editing from weird stock movements, exactly like some old point and click game from a CD-ROM that everyone's forgotten about, you know. But even then, I don't think he's doing it for the lols ever. It just doesn't come over that way. I think that is his superpower, that he cannot become self-aware in that sense. You know, I don't think he will ever be able to actually do something and take the piss out of himself, because he takes it all so seriously. I think for him, this is incredibly serious business. Like, I know that he won't have his films shown at like midnight screenings and that, despite the fact that would be where the money comes from. He's like, no, these are proper films. They need to be shown in the cinema. They need to be shown not with Troll 2 and this, that, and the other. They need to be shown with art films, you know. And I think ultimately that is why he's still interesting, because I mean, Tommy Wiseau went completely the other way, didn't he? He now claims that The Room was a comedy, even though it clearly wasn't. And, you know, everything he's done since is massively self-aware. Same with is it Jason Nguyen who did
Birdemic? Yeah.
Yes, I might have got his names wrong. I apologize, Mr. Birdemic. But, yeah, I mean, the sequels to those are very piss-takey. But again, the first one feels pretty sincere. And Breen is just not that kind of man. For Breen, everything is serious and sincere. And I feel like if you were stuck in a lift with him and talking to him, it'd be very hard to get him to laugh. I think he's somebody who takes things very seriously and very thoughtfully.
So how do you think he's protected himself from this general kind of feeling about his films? And there is mockery about his films.
He's definitely aware of it, definitely aware, because he won't have the films shown at your midnight screening type stuff, so he's aware that this is going on. And I'm pretty sure, didn't he have an interview once where it sort of lent into, oh, so bad it's good and that kind of stuff, and he really wasn't comfortable, and now, you know, he's very careful about the interviews he does and this kind of thing. And I know somebody who has had minor correspondence with him, and again, he's very aware of, you know, how his films are perceived, perhaps he's got to be aware by the majority of people, you know what I mean? Yeah, how he deals with that internally and emotionally, I don't know, because he's definitely aware of it, but I think he must think, right, you guys don't get it. You just don't get it. You just don't get what I'm doing. You're laughing at it because it doesn't look great. That's not the point of it. You know, suspension of disbelief. It's not real anyway. Look, I just want to tell my story, and my story is art. And if you don't get it, tough tits, because other people are.
So we come to our big climax, and the diversions are going off around the world. So presumably innocent lives are being lost, but he does make the right decision. He decides to stop, and he lets everybody know what is going on. Well, I really like the ending to this. I really like it, you know. I think we get the impression he's moved on.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah, he's now got back in touch with his, childhood innocence, etc., and is now spiritually, perhaps not complete, but is spiritually healing at the very least. And he's going to turn his back on all this techno nonsense and drive off in a car and probably, be a prophet or something like that. Now, I think you make a great point with the potential collateral damage from the decoy events. The ones, you know, so we're going to do this, that, and the other so people aren't watching Vegas so closely. Those decoy events still happen. And, you know, we see it through weirdly random feeling stock footage. But there's probably a lot of people dead from those for something that, you know, he decides to cancel the actual Vegas thing, which is good. But like all these decoys still went through, and the decoys look pretty lethal. They look like big fires and God knows what. You know, this money may have gone to the orphans, but he's probably burnt a lot of them alive in these events.
What a lovely image you conjure there. But yeah, and that's why I think that is why this character possibly is the most interesting that he's played. It's such a contrasting character, a character of contradictions. Interesting characters, you know, in any media are, you know, when they have that contradiction.
Yeah, again, I think that's a strong point, because if you think to his other characters, they're all pretty much bulletproof. They're all perfect, and they're all superpowered, and they've got no particular internal conflict. There's sometimes some confusion for him. Like, I can't remember which film, but the one where he has like this bin bag sex dimension, and there's a magic book that you keep seeing.
Yes, that's Fateful Findings.
They do. Yeah, I don't know how you keep them compartmentalized like that. That's astonishing. For me, they've all turned into a weird soup, you know. But none of them have this sort of slight level of incompetence at times and also this massive internal struggle. Sometimes the endings play out as if they've overcome a massive internal struggle, but you don't feel like that was actually portrayed in the film. Whereas I think Double Down does do a good job of that.
How do you feel then his films have evolved over his career, and what do you hope for the future?
Yes, seventh film he claims is nothing like stuff he's done before, which I believe that when I see it. As it goes on, the characters, get more and more sort of perfect, to the extent that in the last two, there is a conflicted character, but it's actually a different character. It's the twin of the main sort of perfect character. He very much doubles down on the corporate corruption stuff. That becomes a far bigger... That's kind of sort of hinted at in this one, but it's more to do with governments and that in Double Down. But man, in the later ones, that really does become like the main thing, which is pushed again and again and again. His films become a bit emptier. You do get... I mean, there's a lot of empty stuff in this film. There's a lot of... He's arsing about in the desert with his... satellite dish, etc., etc. But there's a lot of real sort of long scenes in the later films where it's in the desert and nothing's really happening. And that leads up to Cade the Tortured Crossing is the last one, which is completely different feeling because it's constructed in such a bizarre way. It's literally like he must have like folders on his computer of green screen Neil facing left, facing right, doing that. And it has lots of repeated footage in different... It's such an odd film to watch. Which sort of kept me interested of it. But I would like to see, going forward, him going back and very much dumping this, oh my God, everything's green screen, like literally everything's green screen. Get some physical locations back and keep the green screen for the crazy stuff. I feel that would work better and at least be more interesting, because whilst you can watch Cade the Tortured Crossing and say, my God, look at this, oh my God, why does it look like, oh, that will carry you through it. I don't think it's going to carry us through a second one. And it just does have that feeling of maybe not from a story point of view he's checked out, but he's checked out technically on some level. And I can see why certain people have said, oh, that's enough now. I can't watch any more of his stuff. No, I don't feel like his heart is in it in the same way. I don't know if that's true. I think his heart is probably still there. He's just found an easier way to produce stuff. And also bear in mind, probably a lot of that was put together during COVID lockdowns and stuff. So by filming people separately, it sort of gets around that. But we shall see. Maybe the next film will be using the same assets again. The film will be an asset flip, as they say in the video game world. And who knows? When it comes to Neil Breen, you cannot predict. You cannot predict, except the fact that he will play a messianic figure with superpowers.
Thank you there to Stuart for giving up his time to talk with me. Ashens has always been so generous with his time and talent when it comes to my little projects. And if you would like to hear us talk together about other movies such as Cats, Ricky-O, the story of Ricky, or Diana the musical, then just do a search for bitemythumbtv on YouTube. But of course, more importantly, please go check out Stuart on YouTube at his channel Ashens, and rent or buy his previous two movies, The Quest for the Game Child and The Polybius Heist, at the usual places. Our third deep dive should arrive in March next year, and we'll see Emmy Award-winning Dan McCoy of the Flophouse podcast join me for a look into Twisted Pair. However, that's not all for this month. Seeing as it's the holiday season, I thought I'd perform a Christmas miracle and drop another episode this month. So make sure you're subscribed, as the next episode with two-time Breen star Jason Marsiglio should be under your tree before the 25th. Please also share and rate and tell your fellow Breen Weavers. Time for me to go now, but before I do, I'd just like to assure you that plans are currently well underway for next year's fan get-together at BreenCon 25. I'm planning cosplay, booking guests, and preparing keynote lectures. If you have any suggestions, then please let me know. But can I please ask that if you are interested in applying for the catering team, I really can't accept any more applications as I've been inundated with CVs. So if you do have a food van or catering company, please refrain from making contact. I repeat, No more damn cooks. No more cooks.
You've been listening to My Scene with Breen, a Neil Breen podcast and a Bite My Thumb production. Your host was Neil Knight. Bite My Thumb can be followed on Twitter or X at Bite My Thumb, on Twitch at twitch.tv/bitemythumb, on YouTube at bitemythumbtv, or on Letterboxd at bitemythumb. All music was written and created by Cotsplays. He can be followed on Twitch at twitch.tv/Cotsplays, where every Saturday morning at 12 p.m. he'll be making live music. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and rate this episode.